Most people overlook just so many key features when looking for the right gaming monitor, which is why in this video, I'll run you down through some of the best options you can buy so far and what you need to look out for to find the right one for you. You will find links to all of the models mentioned in the description below, but without further ado, let's dive right in. Starting us off today is Acer Nitro, ranked as the best budget. Shopping for a budget gaming monitor is a bit of a minefield now, cause you're constantly wondering what corners the manufacturer cut to hit that low price point, but this Acer Nitro cuts fewer corners than you'd expect. You're getting a 27-inch 1440p IPS panel at 180 Hz for well under $200, which in most markets is genuinely wild when you think about it, because not long ago, 1440p was considered a mid-range luxury. Now, Acer is slapping it on a budget monitor with a fast refresh rate and calling it a day, and honestly, respect. The screen itself is sharp with a 2560 by 1440 at 27 inches, which hits that pixel density sweet spot where everything looks crisp without needing to squint or scale things up. Text is also clean, game environments look detailed, and you'll notice the upgrade immediately if you're coming from 1080p. Now, where this Acer genuinely makes it a good deal is the 180 Hz refresh rate via DisplayPort, which keeps motion smooth and responsive, and combined with a 0.5 millisecond GTG response time, fast-paced games like Valorant or Apex actually feel snappy and fluid. There's no distracting ghosting trailing behind moving objects, which cheaper monitors often struggle with. AMD FreeSync Premium is baked in, so if you're on a Radeon GPU or even an NVIDIA card, since most modern ones support FreeSync over G-Sync compatible mode, screen tearing basically disappears. That's a huge quality of life upgrade for anyone who's been gaming without adaptive sync. Colors are gorgeous as well because the panel covers around 95% DCI-P3, which means games that are designed with wide color gamuts in mind. Think vibrant open world, saturated neon sci-fi environments actually look the way they're supposed to. There's also a dedicated sRGB mode if you want accuracy over saturation, which for a sub $200 monitor, that's insanely impressive. Okay, no monitor is perfect, especially at this price, and here's where this Acer monitor starts to show its budget limitations. Firstly, brightness is the big one. Cause at around 250 nits, it's fine in a dim room or a typical desk setup, but if your gaming space gets a lot of natural light, this monitor will look washed out during the day. Don't even get started on the HDR10 badge, because while it technically supports it, that brightness ceiling means HDR content won't blow your mind. Contrast is also typical IPS, meaning dark scenes in games will look a bit gray rather than truly black, but this is the one thing VA and OLED panels do better at every price point. So, not a deal breaker for most games, but horror games and space sims will remind you it's there. One quirk some have also flagged is that getting a stable 180 Hz connection requires a good quality DisplayPort cable. The one in the box works, but some have had refresh rate headaches until they sorted out their cable situation. When you factor everything down though, this Acer Nitro gives you a little bit of everything that you need from a proper gaming display without costing you as much. It's not for everyone, because if your room is bright, you care deeply about HDR, or dark atmospheric games are your thing, you'll want to stretch your budget a bit further. Coming in on number 6 is AOCQ27G3XMN as the best mid-range. Now, this is a monitor that looked at the mid-range market, saw everyone settling for mediocre backlighting and HDR ready badges that mean absolutely nothing, and decided to actually do something about it. You get a 27-inch 1440 PVA panel with 336 zone Mini-LED full array local dimming, display HDR 1000 certification, and 180 Hz, all for around $250 to $280. That sentence would have sounded like science fiction a few years ago at this price point, and that's basically the big deal about this monitor compared to the rest. Most monitors in this range slap a HDR10 badge on the box and call it a day, which in practice means the backlight just cranks up uniformly and everything looks slightly washed out. This AOC monitor actually has 336 local dimming zones, meaning the backlight can brighten one area of the screen while keeping another area dark, which is what makes HDR look like HDR, rather than just brighter SDR. That difference is very visible because load up a space sim, a dark horror game, or just anything with moody cinematic lighting, and the blacks look genuinely black rather than the murky gray you get on most IPS screens. Peak brightness hits around 1,300 nits in HDR mode, which is legitimately bright, and the kind of brightness where a torch in a dark dungeon actually looks like a torch, not a slightly lighter gray smudge, so the Display HDR 1000 certification here isn't just a marketing badge. You get 180 Hz refresh rate, and combined with 1 millisecond GTG response time, this means fast-paced games here run fluid and motion is clear, which is still not quite at the level of a 360 Hz OLED, but comfortably smooth for anyone playing single-player games. You get FreeSync Premium Pro as well, which handles variable refresh rate duties, and it works fine with NVIDIA cards in practice too, even without official G-Sync compatible certification. The color coverage here is around 96% DCI-P3 via quantum dot, which still means vibrant open worlds and saturated art styles look genuinely rich and punchy. Now, you will have some blooming with this monitor occasionally because the 336 zones here are decent but not infinite, so bright objects don't always get perfectly isolated. It's much less noticeable than cheap edge-lit HDR monitors, and the high native VA contrast helps absorb a lot of it, but if you're hypersensitive to haloing, it'll catch your eye occasionally. Also, just like most VA panels to date, expect smearing in dark areas, so fast-moving dark objects against dark backgrounds can leave a subtle trailing smear. It's mild here compared to older VA panels, but competitive FPS players who scrutinize every pixel will notice it. We might be too nitpicky with it though, so if you maybe own this monitor, let us know if you've ever experienced any of these issues in the comments down below, cause it might actually help someone buying this monitor currently. Going to number 5, we have KTCM27T6 as the best mini-LED value. KTC is a Chinese monitor manufacturer that's been quietly making panels for years, mostly under the radar in Western markets. They decided to go direct to consumer and pass the savings on to buyers rather than spend it on marketing budgets. The result in this case is you get a monitor that punches so far above its price that established brands probably aren't too happy about it because you're basically paying panel cost without the brand tax. This is also a mini LED panel, which is the whole story here, having over 1,000 plus individually controlled mini LED zones covering the entire back of the panel. Peak HDR brightness, on the other hand, hits around 1,400 nits, which is the kind of number that makes your eyes work the way they do in real life when you look from shadow into sunlight. Most monitors in this price range have edge-lit backlights, meaning LEDs sitting around the border of the screen try to illuminate the whole panel from the sides. The M27T6 isn't just about HDR, but gives you 180 Hz over DisplayPort, which keeps motion fluid, and the 1 millisecond GTG response time, meaning you're not fighting trailing blur during fast-paced moments. Both FreeSync and G-Sync compatible are on board as well, so it works with AMD and NVIDIA cards for tear-free gameplay. The 1440p resolution at 27 inches here is the sweet spot for most people because it's sharp enough that you're not seeing individual pixels, but not so demanding that your GPU is gasping trying to push frames. Colors are wide and saturated, covering 96% DCI-P3, and thanks to quantum dot, they're accurate too with delta E under 2, meaning what you see is pretty close to what the developer intended. Ultimately, gaming in SDR looks good too, and all because because the high native contrast of the VA panel here means even without HDR on, games have a depth and richness that flat IPS displays can't quite match. Connectivity-wise, you get one DisplayPort 1.4, which gives you the full 1440p at 180 Hz plus two HDMI 2.0 ports that top out at 1440p up to 144 Hz and a USB 2.0 port, which is mainly there for service and firmware updates. That DisplayPort is exactly what you want for a high refresh PC rig, but the choice to stick with older HDMI 2.0 means console players won't get the absolute maximum performance, though it's still a very solid layout for standard desktop gaming. The only downside here is that quality control is the biggest gamble for this monitor, because some have reported to get a perfect screen out of the box, but others report minor dead pixels, slight backlight uniformity issues, or dim patches in corners. It's not widespread enough to call the monitor bad, but it's more of a lottery than buying from LG or Asus. Again, some might have different views, so if you maybe own this monitor, let us know if you've ever experienced any of these issues in the comments down below. Ultimately, all these features combined make this KTC monitor the kind that makes you feel clever for buying it. Yes, it's from a brand with a shorter track record than the household names, plus quality control could be better, but you're getting a proper Mini-LED monitor with a solid HDR performance in a way that the competition at that price point simply doesn't come close. Now at number 4, we have Samsung Odyssey OLED G95 SD as the best immersive. Expect a QD-OLED panel to be way more expensive than the other monitors, but if you're looking for that immersive curved screen that has great gaming features, this G95 SD Samsung monitor is the best you can get. OLED already means each individual pixel generates its own light and switches itself completely off for black, so there's no backlight bleeding, no blooming, but just infinite contrast ratio on every single frame. Samsung's quantum dot layer on top of the OLED then pushes 99% DCI-P3 color coverage with true 10-bit depth, which means colors aren't just accurate, but even more vivid and three-dimensional in a way regular LCD panels can't replicate. HDR gaming here doesn't need 1400 nits of brute force brightness like Mini-LED monitors, because the contrast is so high already. The HDR 10 Plus gaming format is supported too, which is still one of the few monitors that handles it. You get 5120 by 1440 resolution across a 49-inch curved panel, which is basically the same as two 27-inch 1440p monitors stitched seamlessly together, minus the annoying center bezel. OLED panel's biggest advantage with gaming is that you get a near zero input lag because pixel response is near instantaneous by nature, so motion looks sharp and clean at any frame rate. On top of that, you get an insane 240 Hz refresh rate, VRR, which covers the full 48 to 240 Hz range via FreeSync Premium Pro, HDMI 2.1 VRR, and G-Sync compatible, so whether you're on AMD or NVIDIA, all the tearing and stuttering just don't happen. The G95 SD specifically versus the earlier G95 SC adds a matte anti-reflective coating rather than the glossy finish of its predecessor, which could be an upgrade for anyone with a window or a ceiling light behind them. This is still a very divisive topic though, cause some swear by how good glossy panels look in comparison, but let us know in the comments down below of whether you'd rather go for a glossy or matte monitor. Connectivity is also very thorough, giving you a DisplayPort 1.4 with DSC, HDMI 2.1, micro HDMI 2.1, 3 USB-C ports, a headphone jack, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. For a $1,100 to $1,500 monitor, there are still rough edges worth knowing if you plan to buy it. First and foremost, your GPU honestly needs to be strong, cause driving a 5120 by 1440 at 240 Hz is demanding, so anything from an RTX 4080 class card or RX 7900 XT is the sweet spot. Anything below a mid to high tier GPU will struggle to push this panel at its full potential, almost like buying a Ferrari and filling it with regular fuel. Also, this monitor is not great for consoles since PS5 and Xbox Series X don't natively support ultrawide, so you'll get letterboxed output with black bars on the sides in most games. It also doesn't support 4K at 120 Hz from consoles due to the panel's resolution. For pure PC gaming, this doesn't matter at all, but if you're a console-first player, this isn't your screen. When you factor down everything though, the Samsung Odyssey OLED G95 SD is one of those rare monitors that genuinely delivers on its promise. You're getting a 49-inch ultra-wide QD-OLED that's simultaneously a serious 240Hz gaming display, a breathtaking HDR screen, and a smart entertainment hub. And now number 3 is Alienware AW2725DF as the best value OLED. A few years ago, buying any QD-OLED monitors or even a similar TV with the same panel felt like winning an actual lottery and all, because these were ridiculously expensive, which is just not the case right now. With this Alienware, you're getting a 27-inch 1440 PQD OLED gaming monitor that runs at a ridiculous 360 Hz with essentially instant response times and the inky blacks you expect from OLED. It's built around a Gen 3 Samsung QD OLED panel, so you get deep contrast, wide color coverage, and way better motion clarity than any IPS or VA screen in this size and resolution. It launched around $900, regularly goes on sale for $600 to $650, and is easily one of the best value gaming monitors you can buy, regardless of panel technology, which is a rare thing to say about an OLED. In games, it looks stupidly good because of that QD layer, so colors pop without looking cartoonish, motion is razor sharp, and fast shooters feel incredibly smooth thanks to 360 Hz plus near instant pixel transitions, cause we're talking fractions of a millisecond here. HDR is genuinely useful, not just the checkbox HDR badge. Cause highlights here stand out nicely against black backgrounds, and you don't get glow or blooming because each pixel actually handles its own light. 360 Hz refresh rate on a QD OLED panel is genuinely an unusual combination because OLED panels at 240 Hz are already considered premium, and this one pushes past that to territory previously reserved for specialized esports IPS displays. This means every single detail on this panel is super smooth in a way that almost looks fake, like someone applied motion smoothing but without any of the weird soap opera artifacts. And since it's OLED, the pixel response is 0.03 milliseconds GTG, so there's no overshoot or ghosting, a combination that gives you the cleanest possible motion you can get outside of a CRT. Connectivity here is thorough as well, giving you 2 DisplayPort 1.4 inputs, HDMI 2.1, 4 USB-A 3.2 ports, and a headphone jack. The dual DisplayPort inputs are particularly useful if you're switching between a PC and a console or laptop regularly. No monitor is flawless though, and this one has a few quirks worth knowing about before pulling the trigger. Firstly, SDR brightness is modest here because full screen SDR white hits around 250 nits, which is the same limitation all OLEDs share. In a bright room with windows, the image can look a little dim, but this is fundamentally an OLED limitation, not necessarily something Alienware did wrong. In a dim or controlled light environment, it's completely fine, but don't expect it to compete with a 1400 nits Mini-LED in a sunny room. Like all QD OLED panels, this Alienware uses a triangular sub-pixel structure rather than standard RGB stripes, which causes very faint color fringing on small, sharp text, so you'll notice it most on desktop Windows text rather than in games or video. ICC profiles help reduce it significantly, and Alienware provides one, but it's worth knowing if you plan to use this as a dual-purpose work monitor. On paper, this thing isn't cheap, but in context, it's kind of a bargain cause you're getting a 27-inch QHD 360Hz QD OLED panel at prices that have dropped into the low to mid $700 range at major retailers, sometimes less on sale. Now on number 2, we have MSI-MPG 322URX as the best QD OLED. MSI simply has among the best QD OLED gaming monitors anyone can buy, with benchmarks that just make it a great monitor for PC gaming. The 322URX in this case is the successor to the very well-regarded 321URX, and the first headline upgrade that you get here is a huge one, giving you DisplayPort 2.1 with full 80 gigabits per second bandwidth, which actually matters more than it sounds. The previous model needed display stream compression, which is just a form of compression applied to the signal to push 4K at 240 Hz through a DisplayPort 1.4 connection. The 322URX eliminates that entirely, giving you uncompressed 4K 240 Hz, and that's a genuine technical step forward, not a refresh rate badge upgrade. MSI also bumped the USB hub to USB 3.2 speeds across all ports, faster than the 321URX's USB 2.0/3.0 mix, added a USB-C port with 98-watt power delivery, and the monitor now carries official G-Sync compatible certification alongside FreeSync Premium Pro. The price went up too, which is not always the best news now, from around $950 to $1,300 depending on retailer and timing. Whether that's worth it comes down to how much uncompressed DP 2.1 matters to you, and we'll get to that. The QD-OLED panel here already means you're getting vibrant colors with that infinite contrast ratio, which obviously makes well-lit LCD panels look flat by comparison. Color coverage is 99% DCI-P3 with exceptional accuracy out of the box, with Delta E under 2 without calibration, which is reference monitor territory for a gaming display. HDR content peaks around 1000 nits on small highlights and looks genuinely spectacular because of the contrast floor sitting at absolute 0 rather than a gray backlight glow. This is Display HDR True Black 400 certified, which is VISA's top tier OLED HDR standard. At 32 inches, 4K res gives you 138 pixels per inch, so text here is razor sharp, fine details and game textures are crisp, and the difference between 1440p and 4K at this size is clearly visible. Every shadow, every dark corner, every cinematic cutscene just looks right in a way that no IPS panel ever manages to pull off, plus the 32-inch size at 4K hits a sweet density where everything looks sharp without needing to scale things up. You get up to 240 Hz, which is insanely good already, but slightly lower compared to the previous Alienware monitor, though input lag is still extremely low at all refresh rates, console compatible at 60 and 120 Hz too. FreeSync Premium Pro and G-Sync compatible VRR work across the full 48 to 240 Hz range, meaning the screen adapts cleanly whether you're pushing 200 plus frames per second in an esports title or hovering around 80 frames per second in a demanding open world game. Now, this thing is big and it's heavy, so your desk matter cause 32-inch monitor on most standard depth desks will put the panel fairly close to your face. That's great for immersion and less great for your neck if you sit closer than about 90 centimeters. The stand is solid though, but the monitor itself is mostly plastic in construction, which feels slightly at odds with the $1,300 price tag, but a VISA arm is always worth considering both for ergonomics and for freeing up desk space. On the other hand, DisplayPort 2.1 requires a DisplayPort 2.1 cable and GPU. So if your graphics card doesn't have a DP 2.1 output, this means you need an RTX 40 series, RX 7000 series, or newer. This means you fall back to DP 1.4 with DSC compression, which is essentially the same experience as the older 321URX, so the upgrade here is real and meaningful, but only if your whole chain supports it. We might have been too harsh with this monitor though, so if you maybe own it, let us know in the comments down below what you wish they could improve on or what you love about it. Top of today's list is Asus ROG Swift OLED PG 27U CDM as the best overall. You can't talk about best gaming monitors without mentioning Asus top QD-OLED options, and once you buy one, you'll immediately understand the hype these get. For starters, what sets this monitor apart is that it has the highest pixel density QD-OLED ever put into a mainstream gaming monitor at 166 ppi, giving you 4K, that is 3840 by 2160, squeezed into a 27-inch flat panel, ultimately giving you sharpness that no other OLED in this category can match. For reference, a 32-inch 4K OLED like the MSI MPG on our list gives you around 138 ppi. The 2K Alienware gives you around 109 ppi, but this Asus is at a whole different category of sharpness. This means textures in games are crisper, text is clearer, and the image density actually has a quality that you notice immediately and can't unsee once you've seen it. The QD-OLED foundation already gives you everything you'd expect from a flagship panel anyway, so you're getting that infinite contrast ratio, true pixel level black and near instant response with a valued 99.6% DCI-P3 color coverage. What that extra pixel density adds on top of all that is texture fidelity, meaning fine detail in game environments like individual blades of grass, grains in a wooden surface, plus all the individual pixels of a distant UI element, all resolve in a way that lower density panels can't quite match. It also largely solves the text fringing problem that plagued earlier QD-OLED monitors, since this higher PPI essentially makes the triangular subpixel layout irrelevant because pixels are so small that fringing disappears. Dolby Vision HDR is supported alongside HDR10, making this one of the very few gaming monitors to include it, which means Xbox users and anyone streaming Dolby Vision content gets genuine DV tone mapping rather than a converted signal. You also get 240 Hz at 4K with uncompressed DisplayPort 2.1, which is the headline gaming spec here, and that DP 2.1 bandwidth matters because it means there's no display stream compression needed. Pixel response at 0.03 milliseconds means motion blur from the display itself is essentially zero, and OLED always does this better than any LCD technology. Plus, at 240 Hz, there's no practical scenario where this monitor becomes the bottleneck for motion clarity. Input lag is extremely low across 240, 120, and 60 Hz operation, making it a good fit for console gaming too, plus the HDMI 2.1 ports here support full 4K at 120 Hz from PS5 and Xbox Series X. Input-wise, you get a USB-C port, which gives you 90 watts of power delivery with DisplayPort alt mode, basically meaning you can run a laptop off this monitor with a single cable, receive a display signal, charge the laptop, and use the USB hub all simultaneously. Again, an issue you might run to with this monitor is that you need a very good GPU here, because driving 4K at 240 Hz is demanding, and doing it without DSC requires both a DP 2.1 GPU and a DP 2.1 cable. NVIDIA's RTX 50 series and AMD's RX 9000 series fully support UHBR20 now, but older cards fall back to DP 1.4 plus DSC, which still works perfectly fine and gives you the same visual result, just without some of the DSC specific edge case benefits. If you're pairing this with a mid-range GPU and expecting stable 240 frames per second at 4K in modern titles, let's manage our expectations first, because you'll be running lower settings or using DLSS/FSR upscaling. Still, if your priority is the best gaming monitor you could get, and you maybe own a console or a PC, this is easily one of the best monitors you can buy for the money. That ends our review on the best gaming monitors. We would like to get your feedback in the comment section below on any monitor you have or maybe want to use in future, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next review soon.